Welcome to The Art of Growth and our season on patterns, where we are interviewing a panel of each of the 9 Enneagram types about their core motivation and how they go about getting those needs met. What patterns and strategies do they employ? If you are new to the Enneagram, you can take a free Enneagram test at www.theartofgrowth.org. And that's also the place you can take a free instincts test, or reach out to us about training or consulting for your organization or coaching for yourself. Let's get into this panel.
All right, well, welcome to the Type 8 Patterns podcast. I am so excited to have each of you on with us, and let's begin by just having you introduce yourself. Tell us where your name and where you're from.
My name is Julie. I'm from North Georgia, and thank you for having me on, Joel. Appreciate it.
And I'm Susan, and I'm in Calgary, Alberta.
Oh, we can't hear you, Daniel. Somehow you're muted.
My name is Daniel, and I am from Phoenix, Arizona, heading to Calgary, Alberta tomorrow morning.
Nice.
Yeah.
My name is Matt, and I'm from Lethbridge, Alberta, which is 2 hours south of Calgary.
Wow. All right.
Could have waited until tomorrow. We would all been in Calgary except for Julie.
Yeah.
Too cold.
Yeah.
It's warming up.
Well, this has been an interesting podcast series. We've just started it, but so far it has gone super well. We're looking at this big question that came from one of our followers that just reached out and said, hey, you're always talking about this thing of the core motivation of the type, then the pattern, and I don't know exactly what you're talking about when you say that. Could you say more? And could we maybe do a podcast on this? So we thought, absolutely. Let's get the types talking about that. And so while the core motivation for a lot of people who are into the Enneagram, they're somewhat familiar with the core motivation of each type, rather than having me share what that is, I'd love to hear it from you in your words. So again, the core motivation, and then we'll talk about the pattern and how that shows up. Who would like to start? You're being so respectful as 8s. Usually they're like the first ones in the group to actually speak, but there's a room full of you, so you're like...
Well, Canadians always let somebody else go first.
Yeah, great. Canadians are nice people, right?
Yep.
Okay, I'll start. I'm Julie. So I was looking at the core motivation today. So what does it mean for me to be a strong person, to be an 8? And then I actually Googled characteristics of a strong person. And it was interesting because I am some, but not others. So I know I have a lot of growing to do. But if I were to look at what I would have perceived a strong person was when I was, let's say, 20, it was responsible, reliable, able to speak my mind, not going to take any crap from anyone, independent, reliable, So I think that was my core motivation growing up. I had to be strong, based on, dysfunctional family stuff. Is that what else do I say? Is that
No, that's great, because it's the core motivation. It generally, for a lot of 8s, is that it's like, I need to be strong, right, in the face of threats, in the face of challenges that life throws at you, and so you got to be prepared, And part of the way to do that is you have to sort of deny some of the weakness that you find in yourself, and kind of man up and face the world. So a lot of 8s would describe it as having to do that from an early age.
Yeah.
Well, and everything was a challenge. Everything was viewed as a threat. It didn't matter if it wasn't a threat. Everything was a threat. whether it was intimacy or love relationship or going to school, going to work. It was all a threat. So at least for me.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Independence is definitely one of my core motivations as well. I have very much an I can do it myself attitude. I don't need help from anybody. I can meet whatever need I might have. Is definitely, and again, from same as you, dysfunctional. I had to meet my own needs as a kid, and just, I'm strong. I can do it myself. I don't need anybody. I think you learn. I don't know if it's a learned thing or part of me to just not need anybody. Just that independence.
Yeah.
Well, I would say just one of the things that my wife jokes around, and I didn't even realize what the word was. But there were times where I just had that innate sense that I knew what to do next. I followed my gut a lot, and even things that I really had no education on of understanding, I just knew, and things just made sense to me, whether we be directionally or what direction to go with something, or and so she called me an ultra crepidarian, which just basically she would joke about that. And prior to the Enneagram, being able to kind of almost put her criticism, and it was a joking thing that we had between us, but because things just made sense. And she's like, how do you know that? Are you just making that up? And I'm like, I just know that. Like there was something that I've always had to be able to do that. And I'd never really almost had permission to be able to do it. And I think even since I met you, Joel, I'll be just 100% honest. I feel like I've thrived in kind of understanding what my core motivation, like who I am. And that it's almost like it's okay for me to be me. And, obviously there's the side of not trying to push through too much and knowing when to push and when to restrain, and knowing kind of the healthy balance of what that looks like. But whether it be directionally, where, I happen to be in a place where places where we have in a church where we do have some of our older congregation as well that will try to push agendas on us to do certain things. And I've just really had a peace to know that until I feel my God-given core to move, like I'm not going to move. And when I feel we need to move, whether you believe it or not, like let's move. And so just seeing the pattern of success and the fruit of that has been not just liberating for me, but like I said, it's giving me permission to just be me. So
love it. So good.
Yeah, I'll say like just like looking at the core motivation of the 8, I see the word, and I've always seen the word when you talk about the Enneagram, like strength. Like strength is always coming through with the 8. It's everywhere. And I mean, I'm not shy of that word. It doesn't scare me or anything, but like I think a better word for me, and I can only speak for me here, is confidence. And if I feel like I'm operating out of confidence, I feel like I'm myself. And I think anyone would probably say that as well. You could talk to a 3, a 6, a 7, and they might all say the same thing, which is fair. But I almost like need it. And if I don't feel confident, I really don't feel like myself. And I'm like, again, speaking for just myself, I feel a lot more quiet, a lot more reserved, a lot more observing instead of contributing, which is not like me, I would say. So that's how it plays out most with me. And I guess you could call confidence strength for sure, but the word confidence comes to mind.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, very good. So I love that there are different ways to express that, that sort of core essence. Like, so when we're talking about 8s, we're in any type, when we're trying to put words to something that is experiential, that's underneath. Right. So, and we're doing our best. So we might say strength, confidence, all of these things. And so it's best for the types to actually describe what that's like for them in their own words. So I appreciate your feedback on that. And some of you have already started talking about the pattern. So there's like the core motivation is like, I can't be caught off guard, or I can't be don't like this feeling of like passivity or not feeling alive in my body. There's these sort of almost existential feelings deep down inside, maybe feeling weak and trying to make up for that by being stronger. So these are the core energies underneath, and then they manifest themselves out into a pattern or a behavior or a strategy. How do I not feel that feeling of weakness? How do I not get taken advantage of again? How do I not get duped again by somebody that I thought I could trust? And wow, did that really hurt when that person didn't, come through or showed a side to them that wasn't the side that they showed to me the first time, So there's a lot of things like that then the type starts creating this pattern. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about, how would you describe your pattern of getting that core need met? What does that look like?
I would start. I'll just start off real quick. I would say just when I'm empowered to do something, it's almost knowing that the ball is in my court. It gives me just the, like I said, I go back to permission, and I completely agree with what you say, Matt, about confidence. It's just to find that place of confidence. But I feel like when I'm empowered with the task, or I'm empowered to say, okay, here's the ball, make it happen. I kind of have to go through this inner dialogue of trying to find my place of confidence. And sometimes it comes, like you were saying, Matt, through listening to other people. Sometimes it comes to, like, I feel like I can find the different pieces that I need to connect to be able to say, okay. And when I see it, I see it. And then I say, okay. And I have the confidence to move. And I'll always say, if I can see it, I can sell it. So if I can see it, then I know confidently that I can move in it. And it doesn't really matter at that point what other people think. And so I think by being empowered to say, because sometimes I can be hesitant if it's really not my call to make, or if I'm not the one leading it, or I'm not the one who's been given the ball. I kind of like just stay a little bit more reserved, because I don't feel like I have the right to overpower somebody else, or, hey, say this is what you should do. But so I think empowering me and saying this is yours, that gives me, and it's the good and the bad of it. It's like, okay, well, I don't want to let anybody down, but I want to make the right decision. So what do I do? And so that inner dialogue that takes place, and pulling information from other people in order to make the decision. But it's like once it clicks and it, like you're like, okay, I don't care. You get tunnel vision is what I kind of feel like. So that's what I would say.
I think for me, it's more along the lines of, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to kind of take the reins, and I don't need anybody's help to do it. It doesn't matter if it's, carrying in 16 bags of groceries in the car. I can do it myself. I don't need help. Because there's going to be that one time that, you're going to need somebody, and there's going to be nobody there. So it's better just for me, my pattern, to learn to do it myself. Which sometimes, at work, I've been accused of being very controlling, but it's not that I'm trying to control it. It's just that I'm trying to make sure that it gets done, and that I can do it,
This is Julie. For me, I used to think, or I feel like there's a before and after of before, when I was like my I always say, use your assets as like a superhero for good or evil. When I was using my 8s for evil, I would thrive as long as I was in charge. And whether it be running an event, or being a room mom, or leading a prayer group, or whatever, I always did great, as long as I was the one facilitating it. Mostly to keep myself accountable, because I don't typically show up for other people's things consistently. And 2, because it kept me safe. I knew exactly what was going to happen, in what order. We were going to start on time. We were going to end on time. I wasn't going to have any frustration with that. It was going to be organized. Everything was going to meet the deadlines. I think the pattern that got me into was feeling unappreciated, feeling overworked, feeling disconnected because when you're leading the group, you're not necessarily part of it. So at least that's how I felt. And then, so I had the season where I always say God does for me what I can't do for myself, where he took away almost everything that I was leading within a matter of 2 months. And it was devastating. And it wasn't like he took them away like I messed up or anything. It was just like 5 different things ended all in a row. And then I felt purposeless. And I didn't really know what to do with that after. Because by then I was completely burned out and completely overwhelmed and had, ended up off this cliff. So that was kind of like my before. And so then my after, I had to really try and change that pattern of always having to be in charge just so I felt safe.
Yeah.
Or just so I felt I looked stronger.
Yeah. That makes sense.
That's honest. I like that. That's
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, I think too, showing strength and appearing that you're strong is also a pattern for me as well. Just, I grew up with boys. I grew up in rural Alberta. There was no other girls around. And so, to keep up to them, you fall down, you get hurt. You can't, no, you're strong, you're tough. You can't, you can't say I'm weak about it. Right. So otherwise you don't get to play. So yeah, just that definitely need to be strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think too, just adding to that, like what Daniel was saying about like, if the ball's in my court, I feel, as he says, with a Phoenix Suns jersey. That's great.
great. I'm going to the game as soon as I'm done. As soon as I'm
man,
yeah,
so
yeah, I've got like a half an hour to get there, so I'll probably be late.
wow.
We'll be on time.
Yes.
So yeah, like, I mean, I definitely feel that same kind of, I can relate with that, where like, if I'm the one where the ball stops, like, that's okay, here it is, like, I'm going to lead. And if I'm going to make a mistake, that's fine, because you told me I'm in charge. So I'm a human. So I'm okay with that then. But if I'm not the one in charge, I sometimes feel like, well, should I step in? I feel like maybe I could, because things aren't going so hot right now. But if I do, like, I'm going to get my neck chopped off for this, because, like, it's not my place. And I know that, but I also feel like maybe I could add something here. So it's just that, like, yeah, the battle there is real. And then, like, I think when I'm not in charge and I know I'm not in charge and someone else is and they're doing a great job, I definitely step back and I'm like, cool, you do your thing. You're doing great. It's awesome. And yeah, as it pertains to the confidence and the strength part, I would definitely say, like, I come out loud and big up front. And I heard it. I don't know if it was even with the Art of Growth or if it was some other thing or whatnot. But it was something about like how 8s have a strong propensity to use like foul language and like pretty intense humor and to cuss a lot. And I was like, oh yeah, that fits the bill. That's exactly me to a T. And you can ask any of my friends, and they're like, yeah, like, definitely. And it's just like, I just come out swinging right up front. And I think the strategy that, I mean, it was described in this, whatever it was, podcast or whatnot, it was very much like, if you can't handle me at this, you can't get the vulnerable part of me. That's not, this is the deal. If you don't like this right here, the loud, the crazy, dropping F-bombs, whatever, then you have no right to get to know me in terms of the soft, gushy, heart on the inside, because it's not yours to know about then.
Okay. Wow. I didn't know that.
that.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Okay. Say more, Julie.
Oh, I've already sworn a whole bunch in front of Joel. I'm really, really, really trying not to swear. But I do. If you can't respect me,
come on, Jolie.
If you can't respect me, and appreciate all the good that I can bring as an 8, then yeah, definitely there's very few that come behind that. and get to see I don't want to say the real me, but the softer side of me, for sure. The one that cares so passionately about other people that can go to fight for them, that will go and fight for your kids or fight for injustice. It's not for attention and it's not for approval. I think doing it from our gut means we're doing it because we think it's right, or I'm doing it because I think it's right.
Yeah.
And I don't need to make excuses for doing it. And I guess I have one question for you guys, because I don't get to talk to a lot of 8s, because I only know like one other one. I don't surround myself with 8s, but how do you handle the intimidation factor? I can intimidate people just by a look on my face or the way I walk or the way I enter a room. And if I don't get tired of that, seriously, it just happened to me tonight. So I'm done apologizing for who I am. And I guess if you guys had anything to say about that, I'd appreciate it.
I'm going to say one thing, because it kind of goes off of what Matt and what you're talking about, Julie, is, and I didn't realize it until you guys just kind of helped me formulate that. But it's completely, for me, like I've learned, even in my, and I think the word that I would use, Matt, is vulnerability. So I think the same gut feeling I have when I lead in confidence, or I go in confidence, is because I've come to the grips with that word of my why. So once I understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, I can move forward in confidence with things that are, whether, like I said, when I'm empowered, but at the same time, I've almost learned too, and it's really cool that you guys are saying the things you're saying, because it's kind of like I kind of have an enlightening moment, because I really lead a lot with vulnerability. I'm one who, in a group of people, will be the first one to try and find a common ground or just even be the first one to be vulnerable. I'll just say it as simply as that. And what I've learned in that is the same confidence I have in leading in when people are following in things that I could be looked at as strong or confident. I have confidence in my vulnerability, because I understand why. I understand that there is a strength in being vulnerable. And so sometimes and what I've learned is my kids have told me, dealing with a lot of young people that I deal with, and people in general, is that, that I don't realize I have an intimidating presence, but I've heard that before. So sometimes when I lead with the vulnerability, like, people's walls come down very quickly as well. So I guess my point in that is that I've seen now that it's the same superpower, like you said, that you have leading in things that we feel strong in, that I feel strong in. I've learned to lead in the same superpower in my vulnerability as well. And I've done it for a lot of years, where I've seen my vulnerability as a strength in connecting genuine bridges with people. And so if they want to judge me for the vulnerable side of me, that's okay, because I understand why. I understand why I've kind of already went through those roads myself, and can stand confident in that as well. So either way, I've kind of learned to do both. And so a lot of times, I'm more often than not try not to be I just try to be a lot more like a quiet strength, and then opening gates with people and doors by being vulnerable. So kind of an interesting little enlightenment that you guys just helped me come to.
Okay.
I think for me, I think for me, with the intimidation factor, is since I've learned about the Enneagram and learned that not everybody sees things the way I'm going to, and doesn't matter what I do or say, they're not going to see it the way I see it. If I can remember that when I start a conversation or something, it's like, okay, take a minute, pause, try and bring it down a little bit, because I don't necessarily know what number somebody else may be, right? And or what they're masking too, right? What they're trying to hide, or what they don't feel safe about. So just trying to bring it down a little bit, try and be a little more gentle, but it's hard.
Yeah,
Naturally.
it is very hard. So I think that that's part of what's important to understand, at least for us at the Art of Growth, which we really believe this, is that the features of each of the types, they are neutral. Yeah, being direct, having a strong presence to you, being oriented towards justice, trusting your gut. Right? These are features. There's nothing about that that's either good nor bad. And being able to be okay with, like, these are some of the features, right? Problem sometimes begins when we change for the sake of the externals, the exterior, other people. Like, I'm changing because you need me to change, or I'm pulling back because I'm too much for you. When there's any kind of change that is based upon only that, it's not sustainable for any type. And so the deeper work is that of, so the feedback I might be getting might be, you're too much, you're too intense. And then to tune inwardly to see, is the intensity right now coming from a place of trying to protect that vulnerable side of me when I don't need to? And that, as you learn that, then you can, as you were talking about, Daniel, you can move in more confidence, because there's a bit more of awareness of, yeah, at times that's true. On any given day, that could be true. But let me see if I can move in the place of, no, this is actually good for you. This is actually good for the group. This is good for other people. And then you move with greater confidence in that. So that it's not about pulling back on you because you're too much as an 8 for other people. That's a terrible message. I think it's a terrible message for any type to hear, is that somehow they're not enough or they're too much. I want to be able to say to people, no, you're beautiful as you are. You're glorious as you are. But there are lower sides to those features, and there are high sides to those features. And your path is discerning the difference of when one is meeting that egoic need, and when it's a little bit more about, putting something good out into the world.
And I think that's the part that's the scary part, is initially starting to do that. And like you said so many times, in our 8-ness, when you do it and you realize that the same, like you say, it's the same power you have to, I've just learned that I've seen so many times where I put myself out there, and it really inspires others to put themselves out there as well. So the same way I have to be able to drive in a direction and people follow me, they follow me in vulnerability as well, which is, it's kind of a responsibility that I take on now too. Is like, I'll be the first one to shed a tear. I'll be the first one to be vulnerable, because people follow in that as well. Because we are so direct, and we are so confident, and we are so strong in it. So it carries a lot of weight when we do it either way. So
it's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say too, like, just going back to the vulnerability piece you were sharing there, Daniel. I've heard it said, and this is true for me, or has been at times for sure, and I don't know again if it's true for anybody else, but I've heard it said that some 8s will use vulnerability. They'll call it vulnerability, but they'll really share processed shit. Like, they're like, all right, cool, I've dealt with this. It's really vulnerable. I need to share this with you guys, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, everyone's like, oh man, you really went there. And I'm like, well, it's already processed. Like, for me, it was really not that hard. Other people step into the gap and they're truly vulnerable. And you're like, I'm done. Cool. I did my thing. It's all good. Beautiful. And then I heard this line and I was like, oh shit, I've done that. Like, and I have a higher propensity to do that. Like, I'm not the first one to say XYZ is going wrong in my life right now, or I'm really struggling with ABC, because I don't really need people to know, but I've found that when I'm truly, like, actually vulnerable, like really vulnerable. And I guess me saying that probably to every other type out there is probably like, yeah, so you said you struggle with blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, yeah, that. Then I think, it's real for me and it's real for everybody else. And it's just so much more of a real moment. So,
yeah, 100%. And it also does something good for you. And that's why the path and the growth work, it's not about ultimately, well, now my relationships are better. That's great. That's a byproduct. But it's really about you. It's about your development. And so I love that you've mentioned that. Yeah, it's funny, Matt. Jim called it, and he's not with us tonight because he's away. But he said he called it selective vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And he says because 8. So this is the feature of an 8. They're very intentional.
Mm-hmm.
There's very little about 8s that's unintentional. Like, ooh, look at this. I just happened to stumble on this, or there's very little of that. It's life is far more intentional for 8s. So your vulnerability can also be intentional, right? And so that's part of it, is recognizing this high side of that feature, which is like, this is the appropriate time to be vulnerable. I could do the process stuff, like you mentioned, Matt, stuff that's already, or I can be really present right now. And what would that look like? Yeah.
Yeah, because I do, and this is Julia, I do think that we can lead, if we're sharing vulnerability in order to express a lesson or tell a story or help you lead you to a conclusion, then it's such a powerful tool, because there aren't very many people, or in numbers probably, that are brave enough to do that.
That's right.
I just told my story recently, and someone came up and said, that was so brave. And I think Matt might agree. I was like, yeah, it was brave. But it wasn't hard. It was not hard for me to share this whole story because of the lessons I've learned. And the things I've been through have made me a better person. Like, I don't begrudge any part of my story. It's not very pretty. It's not all that pretty, but it made me the person I am today. And so I can be more confident, and I can go out and know that I can overcome certain obstacles. And I can achieve victory. I think the hardest part about getting through that process has been that I've had to learn I can't do it alone. I can't do it without a higher power, and I can't do it without involving other people, because I surround myself with a lot of 4s. I don't know why. But they ask all the inquisitive questions that make me think, and that make me go to my heart more instead of just my gut. And they take me through that selective vulnerability into that really raw honesty.
Yeah.
That I'm required to have to grow.
Yeah.
Now, that raw honesty probably doesn't show up very much. But
no, but I'm even appreciative of you doing this now, because I can feel your rawness in this moment, and it's beautiful. So thank you.
Yeah.
It's really on. It takes a lot, and I really want others who are listening and watching this. It takes a lot, and so for each type, whatever it is that they struggle with, when they step into it, like, man, honor that. Say something about that, because you don't understand the amount of energy and vulnerability and courage it takes to step into some of these things. So really well done.
I have a wastebasket. I almost gonna throw up. So hold on.
That was one of the things that I've really learned about myself. Because I was never vulnerable. I didn't want to share anything because I thought it made me look weak.
Yeah.
And I did not want to be weak. So, it took a lot of growth, a lot of work to get to the point where I would start sharing things and being vulnerable. But like Matt said, I have to process it first. And once I process it and I come to terms with whatever it is, then I have no problem sharing it.
Yeah. And I think, I'm sorry, go. Sorry.
Yeah. And just discovering how much stronger it has actually made me instead of making me weak. It's made me stronger.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, just kind of to Matt's point again, is just I think it all comes back down to motive, and you said intentionality. Like, there's a narcissistic way that we can sit there and try and move in order to get other people to move, and
Yeah.
I think it's creating genuine moments with
Mhm.
healthy intention that creates movement in other people, especially in vulnerable places. So it's always like, and so I'll always try to pull back to a place of, in order to kind of store and create movement in others, as far as um, vulnerability goes, is I'll always go back to the place to try and draw back on a genuine moment, of try and find something that's genuine that I can connect with. Same way I start looking for pieces, and then once I put them together, I'm like, there it is, and then I just move with it with the same confidence. But it is coming from a place of genuineness, to where I don't want to try to, like you say, Matt, to almost like manipulate others to be able to do it.
Manufacture. Yeah, sure.
What's that?
No, manufacture it. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, it's really, so I love the movement, what you're describing. And for every other listener, it's like it's the body type, recognizing, because body types can be very intentional, particularly 8s. And so there's a movement towards intentionality that can leave the heart behind, which is where the authenticity really lies deep, is in that space of emotion. And so recognizing, like, that's okay, that's your starting point. Your starting point doesn't need to be in the heart center. You can look around and be like, well, this is what we need to do, or this would be the better action to take, or this is what and you can see all of that, and then go, and it would be appropriate for me to be vulnerable right here. And you can see all of that, and you can still leave your heart behind, or you can go in and bring the heart forward. And so that's the starting point, is not necessarily the bad thing. It's just moving from your starting point to then integrate, this other part of you.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. So let's move to, you've talked about your patterns already. We've already gone through all of these. I don't even need to like lay out the questions, because we've already gone into, so quarter motivation, the pattern, some of the early childhood experiences that sort of set that you can look back and go, yeah, I can see that. I can see where that began. And since we're sort of out of, kind of free flowing here, feel free to bring maybe an early childhood experience where you saw the pattern of the 8. But also, what I'd like to do now is talk about when you recognize that the pattern was no longer working. Not entirely, because there's plenty of it that does, but the parts of it that weren't working, and what kind of provoked you to doing some of the inner work.
How much time do you have?
Really?
Well, game starts at 7.
He's got a game to go to. So go ahead, Matt. Start us off.
Oh, geez, I did that, didn't I?
Oops.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, I've had relationships where, like, I'm married, I have a wife, but before that, I had relationships that were like built on fear and manipulation and anger, and those were the feelings I felt or made someone else feel, and it made me feel confident and strong and capable, and that's no way to live. I think I've worked in schools, I've worked in prisons, and I'm like, it's far easier to like push someone down than to pull someone up onto your level. That's the real work. That's hard work. So I think at that moment in my life when I was younger, it was just easier to do, push other people down so that I felt competent or confident or whatever it was, right? That's no way to live. And it created a lot of feelings of like envy and jealousy and anger and resentment and bitterness, manipulation, all this garbage. And I think when I got to a place of like a little bit better health, a little bit better stability, and someone politely said, hey, you're making a big fucking mess here. I was like, oh, I am? Like, I think I am, but I mean, really? And they're like, yeah, you're hurting people, you know, and I mean, look behind you, like all those burned bridges, that wasn't because of anybody else. Like that was you. And they did it in the most gracious, the most loving, but also the most straight up way, which I can respect and I need. Then at that point, I was like, oh boy, I don't want to do that. Like, I actually don't want to do that. When I was in a better place, I just said, I do not actually wish to continue doing this. So I don't know what it is, but I know everyone's got this, but maybe I'm biased. 8s can reach down and they just pull up something that they just never even realized was there. And they're like, I will change and I will change now. And it's like, oh, dang, like this is happening now. Okay. So yeah, I mean, it was in those moments where like it just wasn't working anymore. And when there was some serious damage being done, then I changed, you know. So
thank you for sharing that, bro. That's thank you.
It's good.
Really good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's oftentimes, I mean, again, if Jim was here, I'm sure he'd share this as well. Very similar to your story, Matt, where it's like looking back, he had a picture, like one night, I think it was sort of like a divine image that came to his mind. And it was like a field with bodies strewn everywhere. And it was like, you know, yeah, and you're hard charging and you may have meant good at, you know, in this process, but boy, you know, you're hard charging, you left some bodies behind. And that tends to be true for a lot of assertive types. So 8, 7s, and 3s is a lot of that, like it takes a good whack for our types to, you know, to recognize like we're doing some of this stuff, you know. It's not just that the world is crazy and wrong and everybody else is the problem. It's like, oh no, I got to look inwardly.
Right. Yeah, I would say too, not even two, but I think sometimes I have to find a why in order to make some of those hard decisions. Because even in workplaces that I've been in before, people are like, man, you look at the bodies laying around, like, you know, and so there were times where, and you kind of progressively get healthy in those places. Because you're like, okay, not because you have to, but it's, you know, you're like, man, I got to be a better employee or whatever it would be. I think my really crossroad came when I realized, and I do believe my father's an 8 as well. And I say a very unhealthy 8, just a my way or the highway kind of guy. And when I realized I was becoming that person to my children, it was very sobering. And when my 17-year-old son told me that, you know, we were, you know, obviously I grew up in church, but not religious, to be clear, but he told me, he said, if my dad's God is anything like my dad, I don't have anything to do with them. And I realized that just being the strong dad, being the one who provided, and do you know what I do for you? And do you know how, and he didn't care about any of that. And so that was a point for me where I had to realize that, like you said, Matt, like I had to pull the dig deep. Okay, sold. I let my son have a moment of just being honest with me. And I know where his heart came from in it. And literally since that time, that was probably 8 years ago. He's 25 now. But I told him, I said, I promise you, I will never go back to just, and there's been times where we butted heads, but I had this, and I read it somewhere where it said that whoever had his heart had his ear. And I was losing the ear of my son because I lost his heart. And for him to be vulnerable with me in that moment and share those things with me. And so that was a turning point for me. And really the culture of my family, the direction of my life, my relationship with my wife, was I realized the people that I was around most, I was hurting the most. They just didn't feel like they just didn't tell me. And nor, I mean, which I understand why they weren't honest, because I didn't really, honesty wasn't completely solicited. But that was a turning point for me, just to Matt's point as well.
Yeah. Wow.
We have a great relationship now. Just BTW. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Well, for me, I love how for both Matt and Daniel, I love that you can define it by like a pivotal something somebody said to you, like it went right to your heart, you know? So for me, growing up in an alcoholic household, I always viewed my dad as weak. And I was never going to be like him until I was like him. And, you know, I just viewed addiction as moral character, sense of will, failure, weakness. Why can't you get up and go to work? How dare you not choose your family? Until I was doing things like not choosing my family and hurting people around me. And so for me, it was one thing one woman said at a conference I was at. And I was like, damn it, you know, like, oh. And I realized I could get off the train then. That I didn't have to be homeless, that I didn't have to do all the things that my dad did in order to accept the fact that, yeah, I am like, just like, you know, I am like him. And maybe I need to rethink how I thought of him so that I can love myself in the way that I am at.
so good.
And then step one is you're powerless. That took me a while.
That's a big one for eights. Yeah. That's,
Yeah. I'm not powerless. But you know, once I was able to realize I was powerless over that substance, I could then apply it over time, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, to all aspects of my life. So certainly that has totally helped me. But again, it was the hardest part about it was admitting I was weak. I attributed addiction or whatever word it is with being weak. That why couldn't I fix myself? Why do I need these other people? Why do I need a higher power? Why do I need all this stuff? And for this 8, that was the hardest thing. Once I crossed the threshold and pivoted, I was all in. But getting there was a long trudge. So,
yeah. Wow. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, my through my, like I said earlier, you know, growing up with boys, you got to be tough, got to be strong. It got to the point where, you know, me denying my illness or sickness almost got me killed. I was at work one day and I started not feeling really good. And I went to my boss and said, I don't feel good. And her knowing me and knowing that I had this, I never admitted weakness or anything. She's like, I think you need to go to the hospital. After, you know, a lot of her convincing me, I went and my appendix was just about to rupture. Had she not, you know, convinced me that I needed to go, my intention was to come home because I'm strong. I don't need anybody. I don't need anything. I will be okay. Man, I wouldn't have.
Nope.
And then the other side of it too, on a different level is being strong and independent is, you know, I pushed everybody away, you know, so I live by myself. I have a cat, you know, and it's like, you know what, this really sucks. It's hard to live by yourself. So it's, you know, it's now taking that next step in growth and being vulnerable and, you know what, admitting, you know, maybe I do need some people in my life.
I love that.
So
Yeah.
I can't, I could do it alone, but I no longer want to do it alone.
Oh, good. Very good.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank
Love
you.
that, Susan. Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really good. Yeah. The big thing for 8s and for other sort of types and for all 9 types, really, no type is born with a natural capacity to receive love from the world around them. I don't know why that is. We're just not. We're very, very selective in how we do that. But then as you get to the more assertive types, it gets even harder. And so for type 8s, it's that capacity to be with need and to present that need, and for that need to then be met by somebody else.
Mhm.
And for that 8 to then appreciate that and to let them know that that need was, thank you for meeting that need. The fullness of that process for it to really be something that has relational impact, because then the other person feels like, well, then I have a contribution to make in this person's life, and wow, they received my love, and boy, that makes me feel really good. Right? And you know what that's like when you do that and someone's receptive to your love. So that's part of the practice. I love this. This is so good. I do want to wrap up our time together with one question to each of you that I didn't prepare you for. And I did this to the previous panel. And
He's like,
but it's a question about, since many types tend to focus on the negative, right? And how this is what I'm not doing. This is what I need to improve. I'd like you to name one thing that you feel like you're doing well. Oh, right. It's like, please, right. This is the touchy feely stuff, but no, this is important because it's the rewiring of the brain. And the more that we bring our attention to what we're doing well, the more that the brain starts releasing, dopamine and, good feeling hormones to continue to focus on doing the things that are good. So yeah, one thing that you have done, that you are doing now, or have done recently, that is good, that you're proud of in terms of this kind of thing that we're talking about.
I'll start real quick to get it done with and get it out of the way. Is I would say that one of the good things about being able to I guess see our need for others. A mentor of mine told me a long time ago, and he was so right in it, is that you're just better when you're leading. And so that was permission for me to surround myself by other people and to stay in community. And so what I began to find, though, recently was there's some transition that's happening within our church. And so it's it's a period of time where one pastor's leaving. And so and it's been really healthy so far, but there's something in me that has started to almost shift to, instead of being the strong one, is recognizing and realizing my ability to empower others to be the strong ones. So I realized the superpower that I have to see strengths in others and then empower them the same way I say I feel empowered, and I move to empower them and encourage them in those things. And I just see how much more that we can do. And it sounds so cliche, but it's really true. Is I began to look around and see, man, I have all of these people, and not that I can, from a good place of a genuine place of saying, man, I really see the value in this person and my ability to just spark something in people and inspire something on the inside in them. And my attention has come more of like, let me say how I can get this task done by not doing anything myself.
Wow.
But by using the strengths that I have to empower others to believe in themselves, so we don't go forward unless you move it forward. That's been something just recently, and it's something I'm proud of. I really am.
Good for
it's
you.
actually a heck of a lot easier.
Yeah.
To be honest, we get a lot more done too, and I'm a lot less stressed, and I get to go to a game tonight instead of trying to do everything myself. So,
yeah, that's a key thing for all leaders in any role that they're in. Is if you're leading and no one's following, you're just taking a walk. As one of the leaders said, it's like you got to learn to kind of stay with the group, even if it's slower, and even if it means that you're not doing everything, making it happen yourself. And that's really good stuff. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, one of the things that I'm most doing right now that I'm most proud of is just doing the work, taking that step out of my comfort zone, looking at my story, figuring things out. And I think I'm becoming more my authentic self. And I'm just proud of who I'm becoming, the strength I'm gaining that I didn't even know I had,
Right.
a different view on strength. What is strength, right? So just my perspectives are shifting. Yeah. And I'm excited to see where it's going to go as I continue to do the work.
I'm gonna give you big.
Yay.
Yeah.
Love it. So good.
All
I
right.
mean that too. I mean that too. Like really,
Like-
that's just pivotal, Joel. Like right, like that's to recognize and realize that.
Yeah. Huge.
Daniel, of course you mean that you're an 8. You wouldn't say anything you didn't mean.
No, but sometimes I just want to make sure Matt.
We know that.
No. Okay. You're right.
You're in a panel of 8. No one's BSing no one in this room.
Nobody.
right.
Matt will sniff it out.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. We don't say BS either. We say bullshit.
I'm sorry, Matt. My bad.
That's right.
Or worse. So for me, I think I have a tendency to lead or teach from a point of pain, to show that I have conquered or achieved something. So then therefore I can show my growth or show my anything. And the last probably 5 years, with the encouragement of some friends, is leading from a position of joy and like shamelessly being joyful. And I find that it's super easy to identify with people based on a pain touch point. We all have pain, right? I think for me, there was a lot of fear in being happy because the next shoe was going to drop, or happiness was weakness. And so I've created this platform where I embrace joy. And that's the message I'm trying to give. Selfishly, it allows me to focus on joy every day. How can I inspire others in a joyful way instead of in I've been through this really difficult thing in my life. You can do it too. But for women, I don't know, maybe men too. Maybe you guys will agree. Sometimes people are afraid to admit they're happy or they can find joy because they don't want to look better than or look, I don't know. We criticize somebody for being happy a lot more than we criticize them for being in pain. So what is she so happy about is the phrase I'm trying to break. That I can be happy despite anything, or not happy. I hate that word. Joyful. I can find joy, divine joy, intentionally. And I think I'm succeeding in turning my little corner of the world around. It's been really rewarding.
Oh, yes. Very, very good, Julie. Love that.
I think for myself, I would say most recently I started a new venture, and one might say, dude, you're built for that. Like, you're an 8, you're assertive. This is what you do. You used to be a prison chaplain. Like, what's the difference between being like a chaplain for those who are deconstructing their faith and kind of like out there lost on an island? Like, you're made for this. And I would argue, yeah, I am, but I have to create that. And I don't want to do that because creating something means it could fall apart, and sticking your neck out there and doing something that could go wrong is dangerous. You know, what if it does go wrong? And I don't want to do that. Or in my venture, I'm fundraising. It's a nonprofit. So then, well, what if the money doesn't come in? What if people don't believe in me and what I'm about? Like, That's going to suck. I don't want to do that. So then, and we're 8s. We've been burned too many times. This is the approach we take to life. And so I'm like, no, I don't do that. I just don't do that, which is in essence just a really scarcity mindset way of going about living, scarcity of finances, scarcity of just being fearful. And with reason, might I add. I'm not saying that having that viewpoint is inherently bad. I'm just saying like it works until it doesn't. And for me, I didn't want to keep living that way. And yes, maybe as an assertive type, as an 8, I'm built for it. Sure. But I still have to bust through that wall of like that scarcity mindset that I grew up with, which I feel like I'm slowly doing. And, being less afraid to take those risks and do that kind of thing is huge for me. So that's something that I'm doing. So
Right on, bro.
Very
You can
good.
do it.
Yeah, and I want to add something that you may not have said about yourself, and would maybe not say about yourself, but that I see in you, and that is you're moving also more in the places of authenticity. Like the thing that you're putting out into the world, it's near and dear to your heart, which is why it's so damn terrifying. And you could build and construct anything else as an 8 and be like, yeah, whatever, because it's not. There's no loss in it for you if it doesn't succeed.
True.
This one, man, this is the work of your heart. So I get it.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thanks, Joel.
Yeah, I see that, and I see that for each of you that what you're talking about. It's authentic. It's real for you. This is where you're at, and so well done, man. This has been awesome. So I have so enjoyed each of you. Man, I wish we could just spend another hour unpacking all of this. But I wanted to say a big, huge thanks to each of you for opening up your hearts, for sharing as you did so vulnerably, so truthfully. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank
Thank you, Joel.
Thanks, Joel.
Thank you, guys. Nice to meet you.